Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We're live. It's Sunday, June 17, 2007, and it also happens to be Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to my father and your father and everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody who's a father, anyway. We're live. As I mentioned, we're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit education organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Ventana del Sol on East Old Torf, starting at 11 o'clock. Except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. And in addition to that, the lecture series starts at 12:15.
That's right.
As opposed to 11 o'clock. The building opens at noon. The July 1st lecture, you want to go ahead and tell us about that? Or
We'll have 5 members of the court-appointed special advocates program, which helps children out that are in legal tangles with their parents and such, and they look out for the needs of the child. And they're a group that does this out of charity, and they do a lot of good work for a lot of kids here in Austin, and they're going to come talk to us.
Great. And we're looking forward to that. The lecture series will continue on the first Sunday in August. I'll actually be doing a lecture on the history of hell that we postponed a couple weeks ago.
It's really going to happen.
For the show.
Come hell or high water.
It's going to happen, even if Don has to hit me over the head with a club and drag me in to do it. So thanks for joining us. As I said, we're live. This is a live public access call-in television program. We'll have the number up for you shortly. It's a chance to answer questions about atheism, to kind of clear up misperceptions that people may have about who atheists are, what they believe, what they don't believe, to present views and discuss topics that we find relevant to church-state separation, and also to encourage public debate on the broader topics of religion and belief. So we'll have the number up for you later. You can feel free to call in. You can talk about the topic that we're going to discuss today, or anything else that strikes your fancy. And by the way, my name's Matt Dillahunty, and this is Don Baker.
Hey.
I'm on here every week, and these guys rotate through every 4 weeks, so sometimes I forget to say.
Right.
Plus, it's on the screen, so right there it just says who I am. It's not really that important. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly audio internet podcast called The Nonprofits. It's Prophets. You can go to www.nonprofitsradio.com in order to download the podcast from that. That's an audio-only podcast, and we don't take calls, but we do run a chat room in conjunction with the program that allows people who are listening live to talk with each other. Once upon a time, it allowed them to talk to us. It still does, but now that it's just Dennis LeBay and myself doing the show, I have a lot less time to actually deal with what's going on in the chat room. But, yesterday we got a little bit done and answered some questions. We were live yesterday. The next live show will be June 30th, the last day of this month. It's a Saturday from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Central. For those of you who would like to tune in live and join us in the chat room, there's limited availability to live listeners because we run this thing from my own machine. So I think I've got room for about 30 people to connect directly, and we pretty much hit 30 almost every single time we do it.
Well, that's great.
Although the podcast afterward downloaded by considerably more people. I think some people got frustrated.
Right.
Yeah. I think there's some people who got frustrated trying to connect live, or maybe they've got better things to do on a beautiful Saturday afternoon than listen to me, and they can listen to me later on or during the drive. So there's the 2 programs the ACA sponsors. The audio portion of this program is available on our website, www.atheist-community.org, and the website for this television show, atheist-experience.com. You can download the audio portion, and also there are links now to the video portion, which have been posted up on Google Video, and that's going exceptionally well. We're getting a lot of feedback from around the world, different people who have discovered the show and come across it. We've received an email this week about somebody else who was also asking if they could get copies of the show to put on their local public access television and help support what we do. We definitely encourage that. There are a number of people who've tried doing that. But you'll need to first start by checking with your local public access television station, find out what the requirements are as far as becoming a producer and getting a television program online. You obviously, since you'll be using the recorded version of ours, we'll have to, the telephone number thing is a potential issue. But also, not every public access television station allows people to put on content that's produced elsewhere.
There's a lot of niggling little requirements like that, and
some of them don't want 90-minute shows,
dead space, and all this crazy stuff.
And they may have specific technical requirements for you to look into. But there is a way that the audio or the complete program is available on DVD at the website, and because of the people who've requested to put this on in their local stations, we've also got a DVD subscription. Well, it serves more than just that reason, but yeah. Right. So you can feel free to visit the website for that. Also, the ACA, in addition to hosting these programs, does a number of things throughout the month for the atheist community. Our primary goal is, of course, to support atheists in Austin. One of the things that we do is Thursday we have happy hour at Dog and Duck Pub, located at the corner of 17th and Guadalupe. That starts at about 7 o'clock and runs till whenever. It's a nice little pub downtown where we can sit around and talk. You can meet the people in the atheist community as well as other people who may become members in the future. In addition to that and the lectures, the cast and crew of this program get together and go to dinner every day after the show, or every Sunday after the show. We're on until 4:30, and today we'll be going to dinner at Threadgill's, as we have for many, many months. We'll be down there around 5 o'clock. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us. You don't have to be a member to attend any of those events. Next week we'll be changing. We've made an executive decision. Next week we'll be at IHOP at the corner of I-35 and Cesar Chavez. The address is on the screen right now, 707 East Cesar Chavez. We have the room from the reserved room from 5 to 7, and we're going to try that out. And if it works out, we'll continue to use that.
But this week is Threadgill,
our regular meeting. But today we're going back to Threadgill's. So it's your last chance to come down and sit with us and get some meatloaf or whatever it is. Chicken fried steak.
Something sinful.
Fried okra or whatever it is at Threadgill's that you happen to like. Enjoy it. The activities group has put together a number of activities they're going to start doing every single Wednesday for members. We're rotating through different activities so we can find out where the most interest is, what people want to do, and then push those events more in the future. This past week we had board gaming, card gaming, in conjunction with the Center for Inquiry at Thor's Hammer. That went pretty well. And this week on Wednesday will be bowling, and I think it's at, is it 300?
Austin Lanes.
Austin Lanes. And it's right there on I-35, just south of Breaker, I guess.
South of Breaker, right, between Breaker and Runberg.
On the access road. So there's more information about that up at the website, and there's more information about all kinds of things at the website, including a frequently asked questions page. If you call, if you don't get through on the telephone today, or you don't want to, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, the co-host, some other people behind the scenes. And if you don't feel like actually emailing us, or you want to make sure that you get your ducks in a row first, you can visit the frequently asked questions portion of our website page. There's a lot of good answers there, things like, what's the difference between an atheist and an agnostic, and other things like that. But feel free to call in and ask those questions as well. I do what I can, and we'll try and answer any question that's presented to us. The FAQ basically exists so that we don't have to answer the same question 5 or 6 times in a single show. So with all that out of the way, I have one thing that came in via email, and I was dared.
Okay.
I dare you to present this information to the rest of your kooks. I'm not going to waste any time on this at all. Basically, it was an article that had been culled from WorldNet Daily or something, but that was a rehash of something from many years ago, and it was proof of the Exodus. Mm-hmm. And it was a rehashing of Ron Wyatt, who was a biblical archaeologist who had no credentials in anything.
Biblical archaeologist wannabe, I guess. Right?
And he was constantly challenged by scientists, and whenever they'd challenge him, instead of actually presenting, I don't know, maybe some evidence, he'd just say, these people are out to get me, or come up with whatever excuses. But anyway, he found evidently some chariot wheels at the bottom of the Red Sea, and this is proof of the Exodus.
Right.
And I was dared to share that with you.
The Exodus occurred at the Reed Sea, right?
Yeah,
different place altogether.
That's one possible thing. The other thing, the thing that struck me was that, you've got somebody here who thinks that they're critically examining a claim. They think that they're looking into it and that they've got sufficient evidence, and this all seems plausible. On the other hand, what this gentleman's really saying is that the discovery of some chariot wheels at the bottom of the Red Sea, the best possible explanation for those wheels getting down there is that a divine, transcendent, supernatural being who, in the process of shepherding his favored children out of Egypt, parted the waters to allow them to cross, and then when the Egyptians came through, closed the waters and flooded and killed them all. That's the best explanation for finding a wheel at the bottom of a lake. What's your explanation for the prize at the bottom of a box of Cracker Jacks? Did the aliens put that in there after they removed the probe?
It's religious thinking, right? It's start with the conclusion you want and find whatever supporting evidence you can and throw away everything else. Right?
This same gentleman, you know, after pointing out what was wrong with that, came back with this story about George Washington's vision at Valley Forge, which is basically internet glurge that started with a newspaper column in 1880. Kind of propaganda and untrue, you know, motivational. I get tons of them, and almost all of the junk spam glurge like that I get are from Christians. You know, it's somebody saw, you know, Mother Teresa on a taco or an angel.
Well, they want to make George Washington into some sort of messiah, right?
Yeah. So, you know, I'm true to my word. I've taken your dare, and now I've told all the rest of the kooks exactly how unbelievable your little story was. But, you know, I realize that when you have these beliefs, it's very easy to kind of succumb to your presuppositions, to say, oh, here's a story that appears to confirm what I already believe. And here's some things that kind of look like facts that would kind of support it, and therefore it is just one more piece of evidence in a big puzzle. And in actuality, it's a single claim that needs to be analyzed by itself. Ron Wyatt, over the course of his years as a biblical archaeologist, claimed to have found Noah's Ark, Noah's house, Noah's wife's house, Noah's grave, the pieces from the original 10 Commandments fragments, the Ark of the Covenant, which he claims that the Jewish government is hiding under the original Golgotha so that they can move it to the new temple when they build the new temple. And he claimed everything. If there was something you could possibly claim as like a biblical discovery, he claimed it. So, you know, and they don't bear up to scientific scrutiny. But I don't want to waste any more time on that. He's already wasted more time than I think it's worth. So we'll go on to what you wanted to talk about today.
Well, and it kind of relates a little about today's topic. I mean, we're talking about atheist humor. We're in a little bit of a bubbly mood here today, and hopefully the show will be fun for everybody. The point is that atheists like to have fun too. We're not all just dour curmudgeon sourpusses sitting around. We do a fair amount of that, but that's not all we do.
So evidently we had a good long shot of the top of my head while you were talking, and I didn't notice it.
Oh, okay. Well, that'll work.
See, there's humor right from the start.
So we're going to do a little sampling of atheist humor today, hit some of the ones that atheists are kind of enjoy and have a lot of fun with. Not all the humor is from atheists, which is interesting, right? So sometimes we're laughing at you instead of with you.
Yeah.
So humor can play on the absurdity of a situation. It but it can be completely truthful, right? We'll see some really truthful stuff that's very, very humorous because it's a smart way of looking at the world, or it's a perspective. Religious humor is especially interesting because religions make claims about the truth of the world, and sometimes those truths don't correspond to anything that in anybody else's reality, right? So one man's religion may be another man's belly laugh, as Ashley Perrian's signature used to say. Humor can also be used to making a point that the audience wouldn't otherwise necessarily want to hear, so it can get under the radar, and that's I think one of the really nice things about humor. You can kind of convey a message that people wouldn't normally listen to. Humor can be motivating and intellectual, and it can cause action. One of the shining examples of humor, I think, is Jon Stewart, who actually goes and he's on The Daily Show, and he goes and pokes fun at the absurdity of our government and helps educate people as to what's really going on, because the government is screwing things up pretty well. So today we're going to talk about atheist humor. Most atheist humor is satire, pointing out the ridiculousness of religious claims and such. So some of the humor, some of the things we find humorous is stuff that other people find very serious. One of our members just today got a newsletter from the House of Yahweh, the House of Yahweh newsletter, and he says the article is titled "Soon a Nuclear Baby, June 12th, 2007." My dear friends, the headline sounds like something from the darkest minds of Hollywood, but this is far from fiction. It's 100% true. The nuclear baby was conceived September 12, 2006, and just as with a woman with a child, 9 months later, the delivery is due, which will bring us to June 12, 2007. The nuclear baby will actually kill 1/3 of man over a 1/4 part of the earth in and around the great river Euphrates. This prophecy was written over 2,000 years ago, just as the one called the Savior was killed in Jerusalem on a stake, which was first prophesied almost 4,000 years before it occurred. So, in case you didn't know, the world ended June 12th, and it's a little late. 100% true. So we find that pretty funny. So, that was good. So.
There's a nuclear baby who's getting ready to kick everybody's ass.
Right. So,
but only if you're looking at the Tigris.
It's hard to laugh at the rapture folks because you know they're pretty out there, and it's a pretty kind of frightening subject, right? So
I'm curious as to what they actually meant by nuclear baby. I mean, is it the baby's like radioactive?
They pick some random date, pick 9 months, and then they get another random date, and I guess they make money at it.
You know, the whole thing about a possibly radioactive baby. Now, I've seen some diapers that seemed like it came from radioactive babies, but I don't think it's going to kill the world. Right. Might make you sick.
Smelled that bad.
You may have to run outside to retch, but I don't think it's going to kill the world.
So the news is often a source of stories, and I have 2 news articles here. I'm going to read parts of both of them. One's an old story and one's a news story. One's a real story and one's a fake story. Okay, so the real question is, can you tell them apart? So where's reality here, right? Let's start with the old story. Pope forgives molested children. The Vatican City calling forgiveness. One of the highest virtues taught to us by Jesus. Pope John Paul II, from May 2002, issued a papal decree Monday absolving priest molested children of all sin. Quote, though the grave and terrible sins have been committed, our Lord teaches us to turn the other cheek and forgive those who have sinned against us, said the Pope, reading a prepared statement from a balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square. Quote, that is why we despise the terrible... despite the terrible wrongs they have committed, the Church must move on and forgive the children for their misdeeds. Okay, I'll read a little further here. For the Catholics waiting for the Pope to bring his long silence in the scandal, the sweeping and decisive nature of his response has come as a welcome relief. Quote, the Pope has shown a great love and compassion, just as much as Jesus did when he ministered to tax collectors and whores, said the Cardinal Bernard Law of Boston. Quote, despite all they've done to jeopardize the careers of so many priests, to say nothing of imperiling the priests' immortal souls, the Church embraces these underage seducers and tempters with open arms. The Pope's word and action prove that the Church is willing to put an end to the suffering and let healing begin. So that's one story. Here's another story from May 30th, 2007. This is in Canada, the Canadian newspaper. A U.S. scientist and a small band of believers are planning a journey to the Canadian Arctic for what they call the greatest geological expedition in history. They're looking for a fog-shrouded hole in the Arctic Ocean that leads, they say, to the center of the Earth, where an unknown civilization is lurking inside the hollow core of the planet. This time next year, the Kentucky-based physicist and futurist Brooks Agnew hopes to board the commercially owned Russian icebreaker Yamal in the port of Murmansk and sail to the polar sea just beyond Canada's Arctic islands. Agnew is testing the latest in a long line of people to test the theory that the humans live on the surface of a hollow planet in which 2 undiscovered openings near the North and South poles connect the outer Earth with the inner realm. Okay, so there's a question for you. Which of these is a real story about, reported in real serious newspaper, and which of these is humor? So maybe we'll reveal that at the end of the show. So sometimes humor will will say the most obvious thing about something and give you a perspective. So we have a slide on this. This slide is kind of a motivational poster. Guys, can you show the slide? Christianity is the belief that a cosmic Jewish zombie who is his own father can make you live forever if you symbolically eat his flesh and telepathically tell him you accept him as your master so that he can remove an evil force from your soul that is present in all humanity because a rib woman was convinced by a talking snake to eat from a magical tree. So that's how you might sum up Christianity. Humor can come in the form of some sort of physical object, and physical objects are very cool because they're they kind of point out the absurdity of some of the cherished beliefs that we have, so the ideas that we have in our mind. This is the Yo God detector. It's a little dial that if there's God present, it will move from no to yes. And there is a whole idea behind that, the Yo God detector. We've heard from people claim that a certain event is a sign from God. For example, a quick internet search will turn up this story. Quote, Romanian prisoners have promised to behave after finding a cross-shaped turnip. The inmates are reported to believe in God, telling them to be good, and that the priest at the jail in Satu Mare thinks that the vegetable is proof that God exists, end quote. The problem with this using the turnip as evidence, of course, is that the misshapen turnip could just be a sign that the prison farm is too close to a nuclear power plant. Using the Yo God detector, we don't need to rely on odd turnips, grilled cheese sandwiches, or other natural events as a way for God to communicate with us. It gives him a straightforward way to know he exists. Okay, so that's the Yo God detector, so you can find that on the internet.
And actually, I'm planning on buying one of the Yo God detectors and taking it to churches around town during services and see if God
is present in the churches. That's a fine idea. Also on the internet, you can find Jesus dress up, both in an interactive form on the internet, or you can buy a refrigerator magnet set. These come from a personality, Normal Bob Smith, who is a character in himself. He actually does sharpen his horns at night, as some atheists are supposed to do. Other personalities that are worthy of note are George Carlin, who is a very famous stand-up comic, and I consider him kind of a hero because he's been poking fun at the Catholic Church for years, and now it's relatively safe to do it. I think, but when he started, it was not so safe to do it. I'm sure he's gotten lots and lots of Christian love death threats. Another atheist performer, stand-up comic, is Julia Sweeney from Saturday Night Live, and she's got a CD out called "Letting Go of God" that I've heard good things about. There are a bunch of actors on the internet doing videos called Mr. Deity. I wish we could have played one today, but it's worth checking out. Mr. Deity is under the D there, and his assistant Larry is on the right, and he's kind of a high-strung director type that has all these creative vision, and they don't quite get turned into what he really wants, and Larry is kind of helping him out and sometimes offering suggestions that get squashed, and that's Jesus on the left.
I have some interesting news about Mr. Deity, actually.
Okay, tell us.
This past Monday, there should be a podcast that went up today at 8hourlunch.com where they called and interviewed me and we talked about it. Turns out the guy who plays the deity and is behind all this is an ex-Mormon.
Oh, okay.
And as I recently discovered, one of the reasons why we haven't seen a new episode in a month or so is because he's evidently got approval now to make it a pilot to be a TV show. Now, I'm going to predict that it bombs horribly and goes away because I don't know that there's that much of a market for it, but I'm damn glad that it's happening because it's incredibly
that's
funny.
Cool stuff. So it's very hard to be funny all the time, to be funny regularly. It's very, very hard to do that. So we were talking about personalities, and sometimes personalities come to your door. In fact, just this morning there was a knock at my door, and when I answered it, I found this well-groomed, nicely dressed couple, and the man did all the talking, and he said,
"Hi, I'm John, and this is Mary, and we're here to invite you to come kiss Hank's ass with us."
And I said, "Pardon me? What are you talking about? Who's Hank, and why would I want to kiss his ass?"
Well, if you kiss Hank's ass, he'll give you $1 million, and if you don't, he'll kick the shit out of you.
What? Is this some sort of bizarre mob shakedown? No.
Hank's a billionaire philanthropist. Hank built this town. He owns this town. He can do whatever he wants. And what he wants is to give you $1 million. But he can't until you kiss his ass.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why?
Who are you to question Hank's gift? Don't you want $1 million? Isn't it worth a little kiss on the ass?
Well, maybe if it's legit, but
then come kiss Hank's ass with us.
Do you kiss Hank's ass often?
All the time.
And he's given you $1 million.
Well, no, you don't actually get the million. You don't get the $1 million until you leave town.
So why don't you just leave town now?
You can't leave town until Hank tells you to, or if you do, you won't get the money and he'll kick the shit out of you.
But do you know anybody who's kicked Hank's ass, left town, and got the $1 million?
My mother kissed Hank's ass for years. She left town last year, and I'm certain she got the money.
Haven't you talked to her since then?
Of course not. Hank doesn't allow it.
So what makes you think Hank will actually give you the money if you've never talked to anyone who's gotten the money?
Well, he gives you a little bit before you leave. Maybe you'll get a nice raise, or maybe you'll get a small lotto win, and maybe you'll just find a $20 bill laying on the street.
Well, what's that got to do with Hank?
Hank's got certain connections.
I'm sorry, but this sounds like some sort of bizarre con game.
But it's $1 million. Can you really take the chance? And remember, if you don't kiss Hank's ass, he's going to kick the shit out of you.
Maybe if I could see Hank or talk to him and get the details directly from him.
Nobody talks to Hank. No one's allowed to talk to Hank.
Well, then how do I kiss his ass?
Well, sometimes we just blow Hank a kiss and think about his ass, and then other times we'll kiss Carl's ass and he passes it on.
Who's Carl?
A friend of ours. He's the one who taught us all about kissing Hank's ass. All we had to do was take him out to dinner a few times.
And you took his word for it when you said there was a Hank and Hank wanted you to kiss his ass and that Hank would reward you?
Oh, no, of course not. Carl's got a letter that he got from Hank years ago, explains the whole thing. Here's a copy. Let me show you. From the top, it says, from the desk of Carl, and item number 1 is, kiss Hank's ass and he'll give you $1 million when you leave town. Number 2 is, use alcohol in moderation. Number 3, kick the shit out of people who aren't like you. Number 4, eat right. Number 5, Hank dictated this list himself. Number 6, the moon is made of green cheese. Number 7, everything Hank says is right. Number 8, wash your hands before going to the bathroom. Number 9, don't use alcohol. Number 10, eat your wieners on buns, no condiments. And number 11, kiss Hank's ass or he'll kick the shit out of you.
Well, this appears to be written on Carl's letterhead.
Well, Hank didn't have any paper.
Well, I have a hunch if we checked, we'd find this is Carl's handwriting.
Of course, Hank dictated it.
Well, I thought you said no one gets to see Hank.
Not now, but years ago, many, many years ago, he talked to some people.
Well, I thought you said he was a philanthropist. What sort of philanthropist kicks the shit out of people who just because they're different?
It's what Hank wants, and Hank is always right.
Well, how do you figure that?
Item number 7 says everything Hank says is right. That's good enough for me.
Well, maybe your friend Carl just made this whole thing up.
No way. Item number 5 says Hank dictated this list himself. Besides, item number 2 says use alcohol in moderation. Item number 4 says eat right, and item 8 says wash your hands before going to or after going to the bathroom. Everyone knows those things are right, so the rest must be true too.
Well, number 9 says don't use alcohol, which doesn't quite go with item 2, which says use alcohol in moderation.
Look,
and 6 says the moon is made of green cheese, which is just plain wrong.
I know. There's no contradiction between number 9 and number 2. 9 just clarifies 2.
Oh.
2 says use alcohol in moderation. 9 says don't use alcohol at all. That's just extremely moderate. And as far as number 6 goes, you've never been to the moon, so you can't say for sure.
Well, gee. Well, but scientists have pretty firmly established that the moon is made of rock.
But they don't know if the rock came from Earth or from outer space, so it could just as easily be green cheese.
Well, I'm not an expert, but I think the theory that the moon was somehow captured by the Earth has been discounted. Besides, not knowing where the rock came from doesn't make it green cheese.
You just admitted that scientists make mistakes, but we know that Hank is always right.
We do?
Of course. That's item number 7.
Well, you're saying that Hank is always right because the list says so, and
Right.
the list is right because Hank dictated it, and we know that Hank dictated it because the list says so. That's circular logic. It's no different than saying Hank is right because he says he's right.
Now you're getting it. It's so rewarding to see someone come around to Hank's way of thinking. Hallelujah.
But, oh no, never mind. What's the deal with the wieners?
Wieners in buns with no condiments. It's Hank's way, and anything else is wrong.
Well, what if I don't have a bun?
No bun, no wiener. A wiener without a bun is wrong.
No relish, no mustard?
There's no need for such language. Condiments of any kind are wrong.
Well, so a big pile of sauerkraut with some wieners chopped up in it would be out of the question?
That's disgusting. Only some sort of evil deviant would eat that.
It's good. I eat it all the time.
Well, if I'd have known you were one of those people, I wouldn't have wasted my time. When Hank kicks the shit out of you, I'll be there counting my money and laughing. I'll kiss Hank's ass for you, you bunless, cut-wienered crowd eater. I'm leaving.
And with this, John dragged Mary to their waiting car and sped off. So, folks, that was Kissing Hank's Ass, a little dramatic reading. So we can take calls now, but we don't have any calls lined up. So
well, they can put the number up.
they can put the number up. So we can maybe take through a few jokes while we're getting the number up. Guys, can you put the number up? So what do you get when you cross an insomniac with an agnostic and a dyslexic? That's a mouthful. An insomniac with an agnostic and a dyslexic. Someone who lays awake all night wondering if there really is a dog.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Our studio audience is laughing. They're a tough crowd here. Okay, that's better. Need a laugh track or something.
A friend of mine, his little daughter went to the baptism of her new cousin, and you know, the mother's holding the baby up there, and the priest is mumbling words, and he's dumping the water on the head and rubbing it on the head, and his daughter looked up at him and said, "Daddy, why is that man brainwashing the baby?"
That's a good one. Yeah, well, that's kids often say the darndest thing, don't they?
I've been wondering why they're brainwashing babies all my life.
Okay, so the Hank stuff was from a guy named Jim Huber, who I believe was really a reverend who became an atheist, but he's an atheist now for sure. And there's a little culture around that. It's a little bit of an older thing, and there's different versions of Hankisms. So if you're a Christian Scientist, you can kiss Hank's ass, and he'll give you $1 million when you leave town, plus free health insurance. Now, if you kick his ass, and you don't have to pay doctor bills. So that's the version of Hankism for Christian Scientists. If you're a Southern Baptist, okay, y'all, this is really, really important that you read all of Carl's list, especially those parts about the moon being made of cheese and the wieners and the buns. If you have any questions, ask us. We know what Hank wants. And if you ever insist on eating wieners without buns, without condiments, or 2 wieners at the same time, we have Hank's permission to kick the shit out of you, or at the very least take away your job and picket your front yard. That bunless wiener stuff just ain't right. So,
Yeah.
So lots of
one of the things that I found just so funny was Jim, when he first put this up here, he started getting emails and hate mails, or you know, some of it was hate mail, some of it was just sarcastic nonsense from Christians saying, "Oh, you think that's really funny," and blah, 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 and that's not a very good, accurate parody of Christianity at all. And he wrote back and asked him, "What makes you think it was about Christianity?" Nowhere do we mention that.
Yep.
Nowhere do we mention that it's about religion at all. Perhaps maybe you just happen to see yourself in there a little more than you're willing to admit.
Okay. Well, I got, since we're waiting on calls, maybe we can talk
they're
about...
coming in, but
they're coming in slowly. Maybe we can talk about some of the Christian parody sites. One of them I have a slide for here is Landover Baptist, which is a pretty good one, and there's a lot of material there, and we can just give a little bit of a sampling there. One of the things, you know, we had a, you know, the guy there, Pastor Deacon Fred, actually knows about Matt and had this to say about Matt. If you guys could play that little audio clip.
You know, that boy ought to be signing up for the football team rather than wasting his time all day up in his room reading silly science fiction books and smacking his ding-dong to photos of saggy-breasted African women.
Okay, so that's a little sampling of Pastor Fred. I have another little sampling. I'll read a little letter here. We can kill the slide for now. So there's a little children's section on the website. Why did Jesus have long hair like a homo? Dear Pastor, last week at homeschool, me and my brother was looking at some pictures of Jesus, and we saw he had real long hairs on his head. He looks like my sister, Susanna Beth. I asked my teacher, Mama, if that means that Jesus were a gay old butt-sniffing homo like my mama's cousin, gay Bobby, because neither of these got married. But my mama didn't know the answer. Can you please tell us? Yours in Christ Jesus, Billy Joe. Okay, and Deacon Fred responds, Dear Billy Joe, God bless you, young man, and thank you for bringing up this important question. I understand it can be difficult when you see all those photographs of Jesus in your children's Bible, and you wonder whether gazing upon the beloved Savior or just some scruffy huffler swishing along in the Wigstock parade. To add that Jesus' effeminate yearnings for such staples in the homosexual agenda, such as so-called peace and love and compassion, it's perfectly understandable how a good, decent, conservative youngster like yourself would start to out and out despise the Lord. Fortunately, there are perfectly rational reasons for why the earliest known photographs of Jesus show him with girlishly elongated hairs. First, you must understand that it's after Jesus accepted himself as the Lord and Savior and became the first Christian. What do you think was the first thing he did? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's tradition here at Landover Church to carry on this very day. It's the first thing that the Holy Ghost whispers into your ear the minute you get saved. That's right, Billy Joe, Jesus got a haircut. The reason you see so many pictures of Jesus with long hair is because those pictures were drawn by unsaved people. Most of them were drawn by hell-bound, pasta-slurping, Mary-worshipping, hell-bound Catholics. Jesus had short hair, Billy Joe, and he was always clean-shaven for the last 3 years of his life here on earth. Can you imagine how painful it must have been for him to pluck his nose hairs with wooden tweezers? He did it for you, Billy. He did it because he loves you, not because the way a homosexual man loves another man, but because of the way the Father loves his Son, and you must follow his example. If the false images of Jesus and long hair are a stumbling block for you, then just tear them out of your Bible. For a more accurate example for what Jesus would have looked like if he were walking amongst us today, just gaze on the portrait of our godly president, George W. Bush, hanging in the main sanctuary. If you'd like to have
George is hanging in the sanctuary?
No, you need to look at the picture. Okay. If you'd like to have pictures of Jesus in the Bible replaced with your photographs of the President Bush, then ask your mother to contact your youth pastor, Jeffrey Weaver. We have printed out several thousand copies of New Children's Bible and the pictures already replaced. God bless you, Pastor Deacon Fred.
We don't need the slide anymore.
Okay. All right, so that's a little sampling of, there's lots of good stuff. There's 60-minute sermons and such, and a little audio.
60-second sermons.
30-second sermons, right.
60-minute sermons are when you don't get enough money.
Okay. So, you want to take a caller?
Sure, we can start taking a call. Ryan, you on there?
Yeah, how are y'all doing?
Good, how you doing?
I'm good. I've watched your show twice, and I just want to make the statement that I believe it's good to stand up for what you believe in, and I respect that. And I've watched it twice, and my question to y'all is, why do y'all pinpoint Christianity? Atheism is your belief, but atheism is a non-belief in any religion.
Right. And I'd ask you, what makes you think after watching 2 shows that you understand that we focus too much on Christianity? But in fairness, here's the thing. I don't happen to believe there's a God, any God, Hindu, Buddhist,
Right.
Zoroastrian, whatever. But
Yes, sir.
apart from the Christians, who else is actively working to violate people's rights in this country, to take away our civil liberties, to marginalize different elements of our culture, to make sure that anybody who doesn't fit into their stereotype is considered a second-class citizen? So far as I'm aware, it's pretty much only the Christians. If somebody wants to have a silly belief about a God, I really don't care that much. I would prefer that they focused on reality, but I'm more concerned about what people do on behalf of their beliefs. So
Right.
what I see is that people on behalf of Christianity are systematically destroying the country in the way of secular values.
Right. But then again, across these, you have people that commit suicide bombings because of what they believe.
Right.
Why are there not comments on their beliefs?
I'm happy to comment on
We
those
do.
beliefs, and we do.
We've done shows on Mormonism. We've done shows on Scientology,
Islam.
Christian Science.
Last week's show, we talked about Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, and the consciousness of the mind. We cover a lot of ground. And if you want me to come on and say that suicide bombers are an abomination, that is...
No, not an abomination. I'm just saying, I'm just giving a general rationalization of, religions being pinpointed. Because, I mean, you're right, I can't get a lot from just watching 2 shows. But the 2 shows that I have watched in a row
It's
have
fair.
been constantly pinpointed on Christianity.
Yeah,
we
it's
hit
not
Christianity
constant.
a fair amount. And,
Yeah,
and
because
it's-
80% of the United States is Christian, and 99.9% of the problem in the United States is Christian.
Well, that almost seems prejudicial. Why would you?
I am
something like that?
prejudiced in favor of the truth, and I am prejudiced in favor of justice. Prejudice isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Okay. Well, thank y'all.
Sure.
All right.
I have no apologies for being
Well, yeah,
favor.
you were a little
prejudice.
harsh with him. I mean,
Well,
you know, I think that if the caller were to watch more shows, he'd find out that yeah, you know, we're always giving evidence for why, you know, Christians are doing something goofy or Muslims are doing something goofy or whatever, right? So we do have rational reasons for our prejudice, right? We do have
well,
reasons for why we say what we do and why the attitude we have.
perhaps I was too hard on him, and if you want to call back, that's fine. And I really was trying to direct the discussion a certain way. I didn't figure you'd just give up. I was asking the questions and making the points that you kind of seem to miss. One, after watching 2 shows, it's kind of hard to assess it, but I willingly admit that we focus a great deal on Christianity, and the reason for that is that we're in a country that's 80% or more Christian, and what we're dealing with as far as problems tends to be almost, well, not almost exclusive, but the vast majority stems from people acting on their religious beliefs, and in almost every case, it's acting on Christian beliefs. You don't see Muslims arguing against gay rights in America. Of course, maybe because they don't have any power to do so, and that's fair. But what I'm really addressing is that, you know, I'd prefer that people have rational beliefs. Would I want to live in a world that's an entirely atheistic world? Yeah, sure, as long as everybody is an atheist for good reasons, as long as I firmly believe that there's some people who need religion just because they have not been properly equipped to face reality, to think critically, to examine beliefs like that, and to deal with stuff. So for some people, we had people call into the show that say, without God, you can't have any morals, and therefore, if there's no God, then there's no reason not to run around killing people. Well, if you honestly believe that, I want your ass in church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, and every Wednesday night, or whenever your church meets. But for those of us who can understand that you don't, not only do you not need a God for a moral code, there's no good reason to assume that one exists, and that morals and ethics are things which are much easier explained by social necessity and cooperative groups, and that it's a complex thing. But the non-existence of a God doesn't mean that I have a license to run around killing people. I'd rather live in a world where people behaved and acted rationally. But if I can't live in that world, if that utopia is off limits, then what I'd like to do is help to educate people, to point out why I think their beliefs are wrong, how you can go about living a perfectly normal and viable God-free existence. But more importantly, if somebody wants to hold crazy beliefs, that's fine, but I'm more concerned with what they do on behalf of those beliefs. And when you run around dictating what people can and can't do, should and shouldn't do, some teacher we talked about yesterday on the nonprofits, and this happened in the UK, so it's not completely relevant to U.S. law, but refused to let a little girl read from a Harry Potter book because she claimed it violated her religion. Well, what we don't understand is that that's an imposition of your religion upon everybody else. Stop imposing your religion on everybody else. But anyway, that wasn't too funny.
No, I'm limp.
We didn't need to know that.
TMI, huh? Okay. Well, we're a live call-in show. It's Sunday what day is it?
It's June 17th, Father's Day.
Father's Day. Give us a call if you want.
I'm going to pick on Christianity again with a joke.
Okay. You got a joke for us?
Yeah. Pat Robertson's walking along, and he's heading down towards his office building. He's on the sidewalk, and there's a little kid there with a box full of kittens. And Pat leans over and looks in and says, wow, those are just some of the prettiest kittens I've ever seen. And the boy says, yes, they're Christian kittens. And he's, oh, that's adorable. And he goes up there. And about a week later, he had a lunch meeting with Ann Coulter, and they were walking back by on the same sidewalk, and there's the kid with the box of kittens that he's giving away. And Pat says, hey, Ann, go over and ask him about them kittens. He's got the cutest answer you've ever heard. And Ann Coulter walks over, and she says, well, those are just really precious, cute kittens. And the kid says, yeah, they're atheist kittens. And Pat says, wait a minute, last week you told me they were Christian kittens. And the boy says, yeah, but now their eyes are open.
That's, yay. Anyway, that's a little bit of a dig.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's fair.
It's fair. Okay, so let's talk, we talked about Landover Baptist. Well, the same sort of folks that make Landover Baptist work, if that wasn't sort of over the top enough with the all that, there's another character that they've created, and that's Betty Bowers. And if you guys want to show the slide, you're welcome to. Betty Bowers is kind of bills herself as America's best Christian. She's kind of over the top, holier than thou in so many different ways, and so close to Jesus that they share the same birthday, those sorts of things. So, and I'll read a letter and a response from Betty Bauer to give you a flavor for that. Dear Betty, she has an advice column, kind of like Anna Landers, among other things, but she also talks about politics quite a bit. So, dear Betty, I'm really trying to be a good Christian, but a lot of things in the Bible just don't make sense to me. First of all, God knows everything, right? So He creates man and woman, knowing that they'll definitely screw with him, just so that He can act all totally surprised about it and go ballistic on them. If God is so smart, why didn't He do a better job of creating things He liked, or does God just have the biggest streak of masochism ever? I mean, after the grossly dysfunctional Adam and Eve family, who killed each other and had to have been having sex with each other, otherwise there would have been none of us, God ended up hating absolutely everyone. So He drowned all of them except Noah and his family. And the thing that freaks me out is that He knew that there was going to be hate and kill all of them even before He created Adam. I mean, do you really see a very alarming pattern here, or of purposefully creating things that you know are going to hate, punish, and kill? This isn't normal. It's outside the Patsy Ramsey family. And then there's the thing that gets me, that after God killed everyone except Noah, the Bible tells us, quote, "And the Lord smelled the soothing aroma of burning animal carcasses. And the Lord said to Himself, I will never again curse the ground on the account of man, for the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth, and he will never again destroy every living thing, and I will never again destroy every living thing as I have done." This is from Genesis 8:21. Hello! It seems to me that since He knows everything, He might as well have remembered that He was going to destroy everything again in the apocalypse this year. Talk about a lapsed 12-stepper in aggression control program. Quizzically, Belinda Hogjowl.
Belinda got it wrong.
She did.
Yeah.
So you're gonna start an advice column now?
No,
Okay.
but before I give this, for the last caller who asked why we tend to focus on Christianity so much, if you think there's another area that we could or should be focusing, please let me know. But one of the other reason is that Christianity is a religion that I'm most familiar with. I grew up as a Southern Baptist. I was actually studying with the intent of being a preacher when I, discovered that there's no good reason to believe any of this crap, and eventually became, an evil atheist monster. But the mistake was, and this is an apologetics answer, was that when God said He would never destroy everything again, He said He would never destroy it with a flood again.
Oh, okay.
And the apocalypse and the destruction of the earth, that's a completely different method. I'm not going to stab you. I'm going to shoot you this next time.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that's our own little biblical expert.
Yeah.
Well, what did Betty Bowers say about this? So, well, from the desk of Betty Bowers, America's best Christian, dear inquisitive lost child of Satan. First of all, God gave man free will. Once man was given free will, God could rest assured that men would do lots and lots of things that would justify God gleefully killing everyone in sight. And really, God shouldn't be surprised with what happened in Adam and Eve, even if He were not incapable of being surprised, except by what the Catholic Church has done with Mary. I mean, when one says you can do anything, absolutely anything, but don't eat that absolutely yummy, delicious fruit, and then give the tree an enticing name like the tree of knowledge, instead of more accurate tree of eviction and endless suffering, any child psychologist will tell you that you're practically begging for that fruit to be eaten. But it was part of God's plan to have us fallen and wretched with sin, that He might create His most enduring creation, guilt. And guilt only comes from sin, and sin comes from the fall. And in order for us to fall, He had to trip us. So he had to give us free will. And the wonderful thing about free will is that wonderful thing about free will is that he made it so that we wouldn't blame him for all the things he created us to do. As for the passage from Genesis, please read your Bible more carefully, dear. While it's true that the Lord said that he would destroy the world again in Genesis, he says he would do this. He said this to himself. Thus, he never promised anyone else that he would obliterate this lovely little garden planet in a wild fit of honorary pique. It was well-known fact that a promise whispered to oneself isn't worth the paper it's written on. It's quite obvious that the Great Flood, in the Great Flood, God had momentarily forgotten just how annoying humans were, and it was feeling rather chipper after witnessing all this fabulous carnage and destruction. But obviously God changed his mind and the time of revelation was written. By any event, dear, I would suggest that to hold God and his word in Genesis, come to the apocalypse. I wouldn't suggest to try to hold God to his word in Genesis come the apocalypse. I don't think that oaths are quite so binding when they are sworn to oneself, dear. Signed, so close to God, there's talk of the Holy Quadrant, Betty Bowers. So that's a little bit of a flavor of Betty Bowers. So it's kind of over-the-top stuff, kind of fun. So that's another website worth looking at. I forget the guy's name. Matt, do you remember the guy's name who does Betty Bowers and Landover Baptist? It's really sort of the machinery of one person.
I can't remember.
Who has a heck of a lot of...
I can't remember, and I'm probably going to hell for that. Because,
Okay.
you know, we atheists are just as fundamental and just as dogmatic as anybody else. So we have our Pope being, you know, Richard Dawkins, and I'm sure this guy's got to be like some high cardinal or something. So it's a sin among atheists for me to not know who he is.
Okay.
I think.
Well, we have our number up. Give us a call if you want to talk about atheist humor or any atheist topic. I've got a lot more stuff here we can go through. Hopefully people find it fun. Maybe just to break things up a little bit, we'll do some cartoons. There are a lot of great cartoonists out there. We actually have one in our group who is Tracie Harris, who happens to be the co-host of the show, and she might not want to plug herself too much, so I'll give her a little plug. She has a comic strip called Atheist Eve, which is on our website. This particular one is about Christian persecution, and the character is the Christian with the halo. Atheist Eve is down in the lower panel, and she's talking anyway. So the Christian says that if you're pro-choice, you're a baby killer. Arrest somebody. Then gays and lesbians are unnatural abominations. Stop them from getting married. Atheists are immoral, agents of Satan. Put God in the schools and the courts. Show them we're a Christian nation. Somebody ban this obscene art exhibit. Then Atheist Eve says, if you want to believe in God and teach your kids about Christianity, that's your right. Please let the rest of us make our own choices too. Then the Christian says, stop persecuting me. Stop disrespecting my beliefs. Why are you wagering a war against Christianity? And that's Atheist Eve.
Yeah, and I actually, that ties into what I was saying before, and that's one of the most, I mean, you know, it's, I laugh when people talk about Christian persecution, you know. If you're hitting somebody over the head with a stick and I come stop, I'm not persecuting you. I'm protecting somebody else. I mean, it really is that simple, and yet we hear it all the time of, you know, you see this, like, for example, this is graduation time, and a number of valedictorians have gotten up and said all kinds of crazy stuff, used this public school, secular venue as a pulpit to spew their own religious beliefs to everybody else, regardless of what those people, whether or not those people share those religious beliefs. And frankly, the one I saw, it was specifically targeted at those people who don't share those beliefs, talking about how you've got this burden of sin on your soul and you're going to hell. And so she stands up there as a class valedictorian, and Jesus loves you and you need this, you know. What on earth gives you the right to do that? And then as soon as you tell them you really shouldn't be doing that, that's an inappropriate use of your position as valedictorian. That the people out there sitting there have rights, they have their own beliefs, And they didn't come here to be talked down to by some condescending bitch with an invisible friend in the sky.
Yeah, if you want a sermon, go to a church.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I have no problem. Have a church, go to church. You know, teach your children what you want, although I'd prefer you stop teaching them lies. You know, your moronic creationist museum in Kentucky that's basically saying science isn't true, but the Earth's about 6,000 to 12,000 years old, and Adam and Eve, you know. But, oh, gosh, it makes me, I'm just, all right, this isn't funny. We're supposed to be doing an atheist humor show.
Well, here's a little anecdote from Tracie, who does this Atheist Eve. She says that many of the reactions she gets fall into sort of two categories. One category is people that say, oh, gosh, you know, I've heard this sort of thing a million times. Right. I wish I had a nickel for every time I heard this argument or this way of thinking or whatever. The other half of the people say, you're making straw mans. Nobody really believes these things, right? And actually, all of Tracie's stuff that she does has motivation in things she's heard people say, and that's one of the things she likes to do.
Not only that, the theologians have been coming out saying, you know, Dawkins in his book isn't talking about any God that anybody really believes in, and Dennett in his book isn't talking about God, and Harris, and none of these guys are actually talking about God. And yet, the most recent Gallup poll that came out recently shows that, yeah, actually they are. You got roughly 50% of Americans who don't believe in evolution, think that Jesus is coming back in their lifetime in a bodily form to rescue them and take them to heaven, and that the earth is, I mean, shockingly, it's like almost 40% or just over 40% actually believe in a young earth. Now, I typically shrug it off and say, oh, we don't have to spend too much time on these people who think the earth is 6,000 to 12,000 years old, because they're an extreme minority. No, they're not. Now, I don't know how many of that 30 to 40% are actually running around saying, yes, damn it, the earth is 10,000 years old and we must teach this. You know, I don't know that they're that adamant about it, but in studies, that's the number that comes back. And I just...
Yeah, it's jaw-dropping. Well, a lot of people believe all sorts of crazy things, right? And there's another cartoon, can we show this one, that talks about that sort of thing. This one's called Witnesses. And they took me up in their spaceship and did experiments on me. And then they talked to me using mental telepathy. I'll never forget those eyes. Then they took my baby. Then we got this video of Nessie going at least 40 miles an hour just before she submerged. Then we saw my grandmother's ghost, and she told me not to get in that plane. But it was Bigfoot running through the forest right next to us. And in the Bible, there were writers who were witnesses to the resurrection of Jesus, and I just don't believe that people would make something like that up.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Well, it's one of the things, legitimately, and while I do find it funny, people say, you know, how can you dismiss those eyewitness testimonies that are in the New Testament? You know, do you really think that all of these apostles just made up a lie? No, I don't. I think that they may have honestly believed parts of it. I think parts of it may have been changed at a later time, and in fact we have uncontrovertible evidence that in fact some of it has been changed. But the other thing is that I just happen to think they were wrong. I know people who think they've sincerely believe that they've been abducted by aliens. I don't think they're lying. I don't think they're making up a story. I don't think they're trying to invent a religion. I just think they're wrong. And the reason I think that is because there's no good evidence to support what they're claiming. And as soon as there is, I'll accept the claim. I'll have no choice. It's not like we're sitting around saying, nope, I'm never going to believe anything supernatural, and nope, that's impossible, and you'll never be able to convince me. That's not the way it is. I'm just saying,
show me the evidence.
Show me the evidence. You're believing something before there's justification to do so, and I think that's a really bad and dangerous thing. You know, on the other hand, there's these people who tend to just ignore whatever evidence comes along. Yet Ken Ham and some of these other folks who have said, I mean, it's right there in their requirements for members that not only must they believe in Jesus, but that in any area where science appears to contradict the Bible's right and science is wrong. Well, wow. That's a good way to go about it. We got an old book, and it must be right no matter what, but we're open-minded. No, you're not. You're not open-minded.
Right.
Although there are some who are so open-minded that their brains have fallen out, I think. But.
You're right. Okay. So Let me do one more Tracie Harris cartoon, and then we've got a caller on the line. We'll take the call.
Sure.
So this one I helped her with a little bit, so it's got a little bit different flavor. What is your faith number? And we have Muhammad Atta in bed with who is that?
Andrea Yates.
Andrea Yates. Okay. And so what is your faith number? Muhammad Atta says 2800. Praise Allah. I'm 9/11 pilot Muhammad Atta. Andrea Yates says 5. I'm Andrea Yates. I've drowned my 5 children so they'd go to heaven. He says, I flew a jet into the World Trade Center killing 2,800 infidels. Allah will reward me with 72 regenerating virgins. She says, wow, I'll never beat that. And he says, well, there's still time. How many people would you kill to please your God? Then he says, wait a minute. You're not a virgin. There's something very wrong here. I missed a frame, didn't I?
Yeah, about her killing her kids.
Okay, yeah. Anyway. No point in going
It's
back.
an interesting notion about a faith number. How many people would you kill if you were certain that your God told you to do so? My answer is 0. And anybody whose number is higher than 0 is morally bankrupt. Your mind has been polluted by a religious virus, and you need to get that fixed. But,
okay.
see, I'm not that funny.
And we lost our caller.
Oh, no.
What a shame.
Oh, well.
So you got to listen to me some more.
But...
I'll torture you.
If you don't call in, we'll keep telling jokes. How many atheists does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know. How many?
One.
One?
They just take the old one out and put the new one in.
Oh, okay.
How many creationists does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know how many.
0. They've invented torches.
Okay.
But bump.
They've invented torches. Okay. How many non-reflecting monoliths does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know.
This is really geeky. None. Light bulbs are an evolutionary dead end. This is a 2001 joke. Anyway, that's really lame. Sorry. Okay.
It's full of stars.
Sometimes it's full of stars. Sometimes atheist humor has a point. It has legs. It has magic.
Teeth.
It has teeth. It has noodly appendages.
I have been touched by his noodly appendage.
So there is this phenomenon called the flying spaghetti monster that is pretty darn wonderful. I have to say it.
I'm a Pastafarian.
You're Pastafarian. Okay. Well, let's explain what that is. It all started with a letter to this Kansas School Board,
Who were insane, by the way, and thankfully have been voted out.
Right. By a concerned citizen who was concerned about this idea that they should teach creationism in schools and such. And so he writes in his open letter, I'm writing you with much concern after having read your hearing to decide whether or not the alternative theory of intelligent design should be taught along with the theory of evolution. I think we can all agree that it's important for students to hear multiple viewpoints so they can choose for themselves the theory that makes the most sense to them. I'm concerned, however, that the students will only hear one theory of intelligent design. Let us remember that there are multiple theories of intelligent design, and many others around the world are of the strong belief that the universe was created by a flying spaghetti monster. It was he who created all that we see and all that we feel. We feel strongly that the overwhelming scientific evidence pointing towards the evolutionary process is nothing but a coincidence put in place by him. It is for this reason that I'm writing you today to formally request this alternative theory be taught in your schools along with the other two theories. In fact, I will go so far as to say that if you do not agree with this, we will be forced to proceed with legal action. I'm sure you see that where we are coming from. If the intelligent design theory is not based on faith, but instead on other scientific theory, as it is claimed, then you must allow our theory to be taught as it is also based on science, not faith. Some find it hard to believe that it may be so helpful to tell. So it may be helpful to tell you a little bit more about our beliefs. We have evidence that a flying spaghetti monster created the universe. None of us, of course, were around to see it, but we have written accounts of it. We have several lengthy volumes explaining in all details of his power. Also, you may be surprised to hear that there were over 10 million of us and growing. We tend to be very secretive, as many of us claim our beliefs are not substantiated by observable evidence. What these people don't understand is that he built the world to make us think the Earth is older than it really is. For example, a scientist may perform carbon dating process on an artifact. He finds, if a scientist performs carbon dating process on an artifact, he finds that approximately 75% of the carbon-14 has decayed by electron emission to nitrogen-14, and then infers that this artifact is approximately 100,000 years old, as the half-life of the carbon-14 appears to be 5,730 years. But what the scientist may not realize is that every time he makes a measurement, the flying spaghetti monster is there changing the results with his noodly appendage. We have numerous texts that describe in detail how this can be possible and the reasons why he does this. He is, of course, invisible and can pass through normal matter with ease. I'm sure you now realize how important it is that students be taught this alternate theory. It is of absolute imperative that they realize that the observable evidence is at the discretion of a flying spaghetti monster. Furthermore, it is a disrespect to teach our beliefs without wearing his chosen outfit, which of course is full pirate regalia. I cannot stress the importance enough, and unfortunately describe in detail why this must be done. I fear this letter is becoming too long. The concise explanation is that he becomes angry if we don't. You may be interested in knowing that global warming, earthquakes, hurricanes, and other natural disasters are an effect of the shrinking number of pirates since the 1800s. For your interest, you can go to the slide, guys, I have included a graph of the approximate number of pirates versus the average global temperature over the last 200 years. As you see, there's a statistically significant inverse relationship between pirates and global temperature. In conclusion, thank you for your time and to hear our views and beliefs. I hope that I was able to convey the importance of teaching this theory. We will, of course, be able to train teachers in this alternate theory. I eagerly await your response and hope dearly that no legal action will need to be taken. I think that we can all look forward to the time when these three theories are given equal time in our classrooms across the country, and eventually the world, 1/3 time for intelligent design, 1/3 time for flying spaghetti monsterism, and 1/3 time for the logical conjecture based on overwhelming scientific evidence. Sincerely yours, Bobby Henderson, Concerned Citizen. P.S. I have included drawings of him creating mountains, trees, and a midget. Remember, we are all his creatures. Now, I want to say here that this is an amazingly well-founded theory in science. We have signs out in space for flying spaghetti monsters' sake. We have nebulas with noodly appendages. It's just very clear.
Plus, he's given us wonderful meals that exactly replicate what he appears as.
Right, right.
And, you know,
and there's evidence in our own DNA.
Right.
You know, Jesus doesn't have it. There's no evidence in
I don't see no Mother Mary in that DNA picture.
Right, of the flying spaghetti monster. For those of you who are concerned about this being a new theory, well, we have 4,000-year-old noodles. These were recently discovered. It shows that it's a long-standing religion, and it's been the inspiration of great art, such as the Sistine Chapel, and it's been,
which was covered up in a conspiracy by some Christians,
right,
to replace the truth of the flying spaghetti monster with some bearded guy in the sky.
Right, right.
It's crazy.
And what great religion would exist without car emblems and pendants you can wear around your neck? Right. And to add to it, we have all sorts of academic endorsements, just pages and pages of them. So here's one. As a scientist, I'd like to say the currently accepted scientific theory is evolution, but some competing ideas have been proposed, such as ID and flying spaghetti monsterism. And in discussion to include both discussion to include one should include the other, as these ideas are equally valid.
Yes.
Mark Zerberchin, PhD. We have another one here. One of the hardest things to do as a scientist is to put my personal beliefs aside when discussing matters of science. As a professional, I have to say both forms of intelligent design, ID and IDFSM, are equally valid, and intelligent design taught in school equal time should be given to the flying spaghetti monster theory and the non-flying spaghetti monster theory. But speaking personally, I know it seems to me that the flying spaghetti monster theory is much more plausible than the non-flying spaghetti monster theory, ID theory, because it is the only one of the two that takes into account the discrepancies between ID and measurable objective reality. Professor Douglas Shaw, PhD. So we got all sorts of endorsements. And so pulling out of the humor a little bit here, this phenomena, this letter I read, this open letter, actually was sent to the school board, and they actually did respond to it. And there actually was this internet sort of meme virus that went out across the world and did get a lot of attention in a very humorous way to pointing out the school board and the actions they were doing. And I'd like to say it made a difference.
It's one of the most brilliant things I've ever read, and it became insanely popular, not just because it's funny, but because it actually insightful. You know, kind of like the kissing Hank's ass thing when Christians say, oh, that's a parody of Christianity, when nobody said it was. Obviously there's something in there. The reason the ID folks get upset about flying spaghetti monster stuff is because those two theories are on equal footing. And maybe, just maybe, depending on how you put it together, the FSM theory is on better footing.
Yeah.
Because basically intelligent design, when the ID folks, especially like from the Discovery Institute, who are not too thrilled right now with Behe's new book. Michael Behe,
he's spinning down the toilet.
Oh wow. He accepts evolution is true, the earth is old, common descent is true. Everything.
He just wants to get a paycheck from the Discovery Institute.
All of this stuff is true. He accepts all of it, and then he says, oh, but wait, there's a couple of things that just appear a little bit too difficult for nature to have done it themselves, and that's where God comes in. And now, after touting him as years as an expert, you know, look, here's a brilliant scientist who supports intelligent design. Well, now they're shying away from him a little bit, or at least some are. I mean, he's certainly.
Well, he's still on the dole, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, you know, you've got, but it's
no conflict of interest there at all. Right?
You know, when you got real science, and then you've got, well, I don't know, fake science, pseudoscience, claims like that have no basis in science at all. It should be really. I would hope it would be really easy. I realize not everybody's an expert on everything. I'm certainly not. And some people just don't want to go do any research. But the thing is, that position is being abused by places like the Discovery Institute, thinking people don't want to fight for these things, and people don't want to take the time to study and learn. They'd rather just accept what seems comfortable to them. So we'll just go ahead and say that science is questionable in its findings, and there's not necessarily good proof and evidence, and it may be possible that this thing here is just a little too complicated and required some divine intervention.
Right. Well, there's a rock on planet Xenon that we haven't yet turned over, and that's where God is.
Yeah. Well, Paris Hilton found God in jail the other day, and you know, evidently he's was incarcerated, I think, for touching a little boy, but I'm not sure. Oh, I picked on the Catholics way too much today, but that's a shame because the only other joke I had was
Catholics their beliefs are so ludicrous.
There's a drunk, this drunk guy comes stumbling into a Catholic church and kind of tips over the little vat of holy water that, I don't know, and then he stumbles and leans over the pew and he's crawling and making his way, and he gets over and he gets into the confessional, and this priest is watching him the whole time, and he thinks, look at this poor lost sheep who's obviously desperately in need of some help. And he goes over and he sits down on the other side of the confessional and slides a little window and says, I noticed you're having some difficulties, my son. Is there any way I can help you? And the drunk says, well, you got any toilet paper on your side?
This side's out, huh? Okay, but let me finish up the flying spaghetti monster. This letter actually went out to the school board, and the school board actually responded. And meanwhile, all of this ID stuff was going on, and all this flying spaghetti monster stuff, and you can still see the effects of this. Anyway, let me read a couple of the responses from the school board. This is the actual responses. This is from Mrs. Janet Waugh, District 1. This is 2005. Thank you for your comments about the flying spaghetti monster and all of the supporters who have sent in their support to members of the Kansas Board of Education. I am supporting the recommendations of the Science Committee, and I'm currently in the minority. I think your theory is wonderful, and possibly some majority of members were willing to support it. Thanks again, Janet Waugh. So that's kind of straight-laced letter. Here's another one from Mrs. Sue Gamble, District 2. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Thank you for your message. Thanks for the laugh. Your website is fascinating. I will add to your theory as a long list of alternative theories I intend to introduce when it is appropriate. I am practicing now to do this with a straight face, which is difficult since it's such a ridiculous subject. It is also very sad that we were even having this discussion.
Amen.
I will be one of the 4-member minority who will be voting against the flawed science standards currently being proposed by the 6-member majority. Sincerely, Sue Gamble. Then there was another one from Miss Kathy Martin, District 6. It is a serious offense to mock God. little terse letter, so giggle.
So, and therein we see the problem with the Kansas Board of Education at the time. It's a serious offense to mock God. That's the mindset she's working from. How does she know that this guy wasn't actually serious? Sure, it sounds ridiculous to her, but doesn't she realize that her beliefs sound just as ridiculous to other people? What if somebody would have come in and suggested some other real religion, maybe the Norse Odin myth, or you know, any number of other religions that have fallen away?
And the school board member is effectively admitting that the idea is promoting God.
Yeah.
So it's an admission of
Is
guilt as far as
a promotion of God and the one true God that this woman happens to believe in. Right. And she's making the decisions for everybody, all of your kids. And finally, some people got together and said, you know what? I don't think she should be deciding for my kids, so let's vote her ass out of there.
Yeah. Yep.
And the school board ended up getting replaced.
There's a lot of drama going on in the Kansas school board, because they've had several back and forth.
Oh, yeah. And there's a whole book about it, What's the Matter with Kansas, which is covered all...
That's a different book.
No, it covered all the different problems that Kansas has had.
Oh, okay. I thought it was more about the economics, but...
No.
Okay. All right. Hey, let's take a call. We got a caller.
Sure. We got Tony. How you doing?
Pretty good. I'm wondering, I've had a number of conversations with believers, and they hold up the Ten Commandments as great civic ordinances. But I'm wondering, are there any texts from pre-Christian times that also say it's not a good idea to kill, it's not a good idea to steal? I'd like to know about those so that I can...
There's one in particular that is really worth mentioning. It's called the Code of Hammurabi, and it's from I think Babylon, but it predates Judaism and the Ten Commandments by I think about 1,300 years. 1,300 years. It was inscribed in stone, and we actually have that stone. It's in the Louvre Museum. So this stone was inscribed years before Christianity, years before Judaism. And it's still around, and they can read it. And yes, it did have a legal code. It's interesting in a number of ways. It had a legal code that also applied to the king. So it had this notion of the rule of law, that everybody must follow the laws, which is actually a pretty big deal, right? Because usually the kings thought of themselves as above the law or at God's level, right? It was a rather strict code. It prescribed death for a lot of things, but yeah, the killing was disallowed. Bearing false witness, in a trial was disallowed. All these things, and
but where was that because they were discussing man versus man, or were they saying were they talking about a higher power says this is a bad idea?
No. The code, I don't believe says that it comes from some previous god or anything. It's not really clear where the code came from.
It came from Hammurabi.
Okay.
It's not any kind of divine ordinance. It's basically a system of laws, which is how one reason why some people tend to overlook it because it doesn't make it a divine command. But the thing is that what you have is a secular moral code that's in use even among people who believed in God. I mean, these ancient Babylonians, they believed in gods. There's no doubt about that. But they have a code that includes things like don't steal, don't kill, and what sort of compensation is fair when certain things happen. What sort of punishment should be doled out. And why am I hearing myself? I'm getting kind of an echo. But anyway, all of this takes place, and it's a secular code that predates the Ten Commandments in the Bible. And the other thing is that when you take a look at the Ten Commandments of the Bible, and actually there's like 613 mitzvot, but there's not that many of them that are worth a darn, that are really relevant. And the other thing we find is that the punishments are almost all the same. It's death for damn near everything. You pick up sticks on the Sabbath, it's death. You're an unruly child, they take you to the edge of town and stone you. It's death. One of the few things that you can do that you don't get rewarded with death for is rape. You can rape somebody and then pay off her dad with 50 shekels, and she's now your wife. I mean, when you've got, wow, I'm even hearing myself more. So you've got this system that, despite the fact that it came later, is obviously, I hate to use that term, but to me, it appears that this is a much more immature set of laws or way of building a moral code. Hammurabi had them all beat long before they got to it.
Fantastic. Well, I guess you guys can get back to the jokes.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks,
you.
Tony.
Okay.
And that's not the only one either. There's the Gilgamesh epic includes some kind of moral precepts and codes, mostly in the sense of, when you're dying, all my life I have not lied and told it. And some of them match up exactly with some of the Ten Commandments.
Right. So I want to add a couple things. One is I think the Jews actually knew about the Code of Hammurabi, and they were kind of jealous of it. And so I think they created this legend about Moses bringing down the tablets. So I think it's a little bit of coveting.
Well, they did a really poor job. I mean, the Hammurabic Code is vastly superior. Mm-hmm. Now, the Jewish Code's longer, I think.
Yeah. And another thing to say, I think that's relevant here, is that the U.S. laws are not based on the Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
The U.S. laws come from British common law, which was in place long before the Ten Commandments and those sorts of things reached up into what is now Britain.
Yeah.
So this law was in place, the basis of our law, and you find don't steal, don't kill, don't lie, these sorts of things in all of the laws throughout the world.
The only 3 of the Ten Commandments that are actually part of U.S. law are in everybody's laws. Don't steal, don't steal, don't kill, and don't lie, or perjury, I guess, is the big thing. Mm-hmm. Lying isn't a crime. I mean, if you take a look down the Ten Commandments, the first one being don't have any gods before me. Well, we live in a country where there's freedom of religion. Everyone is free to worship whatever God they want or no God. So obviously, the Christian nation that you think you live in violated the first and most important commandment that you believe in, right in the structure of the laws. Right. I mean, the whole thing of graven images, we've got art, we've got museums and this other stuff. And you continue down the list and you find that there are some places that have laws against adultery, but most of them have no teeth left anymore. Nobody tries to enforce them because it's not illegal in other places. You get right down to the end, and the last one is about don't covet. Or if you're Catholic, the last 2 is about don't covet, because you guys ditched the second one and split the 10th one in half. And by the way,
that's another irony is that they can't agree on what the Ten Commandments say, right? There's different versions of it and all that, and there's one Code of Hammurabi, and we know exactly what it says, because it exists, it's real.
and on a side note, I wouldn't want to live in a society governed by the Hammurabi Code either. What is it that makes people think that thousands of years ago somebody discovered an ultimate frickin' truth, that we haven't really progressed and learned and grown and gotten better at this stuff in the many thousands of years that have taken place?
And if it were a truth, why would we be debating it? Why would,
obviously
why is there any argument
these guys did a good thing, but they didn't get it all right. We've grown and learned. We have television, which some people may say is an abomination itself, but we have, whereas the Ten Commandments says thou shalt not kill, we have entire books written to actually define who you can kill, when you can kill them, who you can't kill, when you can't kill them, and what kind of things we're going to charge you with when it happens. You've got, you know, first-degree murder, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, manslaughter, you know, involuntary manslaughter, all these other things. Because you know what? Life is way more complex than these ancient roving band of marauders thought it was. You can't get away with "thou shalt not kill." You know, you can't soundbite everything. And ethical codes are certainly something that just don't soundbite
well,
that well.
and rules-based systems don't work, right?
Yeah.
They have problems where the rules conflict or the rules
You're going to find an exception.
miss a hole, right? The Bible says nothing about pedophilia. Like, oops, big problem there. So I guess it must be okay according to Christianity. I don't know, but
So we got, we only got a couple minutes left. Let me take a call real quick. William?
Yeah.
How you doing?
It's interesting that you brought up sound bites.
okay.
Because a minute ago, one of you guys said that maybe the Jews were jealous of the Hammurabi codes, and that's, I guess,
I
maybe
said
where,
that,
where
yes.
the Torah came from. It's possible that just like how people sample things now, and they find out what's popular or what's forthcoming, that's going to be popular, and they jump on that bandwagon. Like right now, if you made a reality show, you could probably get it put on the air. Perhaps at that time, the Jews saw what was there, took what they could from it, and used it to write their own script, basically.
It could be. It's not real clear that one's a derivative work of the other. There's some overlap, and I think that overlap is sort of the same overlap you'd see in any set of laws. But I think that, you know, there was this very powerful notion that this came down from the mountain or came down from on high or was given by God or was written on a stone.
Well, it's possible without the sound bites to think that it did come down from on high, and that those people at that time, just like now, people stretch to find whatever they can find God in,
Right.
that back then that they perhaps, in their ignorance, thought that those were truths. And only through science have we found out about the things that we now know that the world's not flat.
Yeah.
So perhaps it wasn't a malicious thing. Perhaps it was something to, you know, rally the troops. I mean, those are a people that don't get defeated very easily.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think what happened is that we took the God to equal morality, and that godlessness and immorality aren't really the same thing. God is just kind of a chemical symbol. God is not really an entity. Did the Big Bang happen? It's a theory.
I got to cut you off, William.
Okay.
We're out of time for this week. I apologize.
Well,
Thanks
thank you
very
for your
much
call.
for calling in. Yeah, I think it's a kind of a situation where you can adopt stuff like that. But thanks everybody for watching. Coming up next on Public Access is Jesus versus Religion. You can't call in, but you can stay tuned and watch if you want to. I can already tell you who won. It wasn't Jesus. Thanks for joining us at our new time slot. We'll be on again next week from 3 to 4:30. We're going to Threadgills today. Come on down, anybody who wants to just have a good time, but don't come down and preach or proselytize. You can email me, tv@atheist-community.org. We'll see you next week, same time.
Thank you to our crew and callers.